You heard it here at Hidden True Crime that Michael McKee, the man charged with killing Spencer and Monique Tepe, couldn't be served with civil lawsuit papers prior to the murders. But what you may not know is what this medical malpractice lawsuit actually claims and just how catastrophic the outcome was for the patient involved. Well, we have the lawsuit. We've gone over it in detail, and today we're going to go over everything the patient alleges happened. Now, while the lawsuit doesn't change the details of the horrific crime Michael McKee is charged with, it does add important context to what Michael's life looked like in the months leading up to the murders, including mounting legal pressure. In the period before the murders, Michael was named in this medical malpractice lawsuit connected to his work at Las Vegas Surgical Associates. And according to court records, attorneys attempting to move that case forward ran into a major problem. They couldn't find him anywhere. Process servers documented repeated attempts to serve Michael with legal paperwork, and what they describe is someone who seemed to vanish in plain sight. My name is Lauren Matthias, and this is Hidden True Crime. Before we get into those attempts to contact Dr. Michael McKee, it is worth stepping back and looking at Michael's professional background. He graduated from Ohio State University, completed his residency at the Virginia Tech Carleton Clinic, and went on to finish a fellowship at the University of Maryland Medical Center. He later relocated to Las Vegas, where records show the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners issued him a medical license on March 6th, 2023. That license was set to expire on June 30th, 2025. He practiced at Las Vegas Surgical Associates, the same clinic named in the malpractice suit. Court documents, well, they show that starting in September of 2025, a process server made multiple visits to Michael's known residence near Rainbow Boulevard and West Cheyenne Avenue in Las Vegas. And then on September 30th, there was no answer at the door. The house was quiet and the blinds were drawn. The following day, October 1st, the process server returned and heard a TV playing inside, but when he knocked, the TV was turned off, and again, no one answered the door. On October 9th, another attempt was made, still no response, no visible movement inside the home. So the process server left a contact card at the door. And during that visit, he also discovered that Michael's medical license had indeed expired. He attempted to reach the medical board for more information, but was unsuccessful. So he then contacted another physician who reportedly said he had no idea where Michael was and described it as Michael having simply disappeared. And with no success at the house, the process server expanded his search and located an apartment associated with Michael near Bermuda Road and East Star Avenue, also in Las Vegas. And then on October 13th, he stopped by that address. Again, it was quiet with no movement, and the leasing staff declined to provide any information. So then 2 days later, on October 15th, the process server returned. The result was still the same. No answer, no visible activity, blinds closed. By October 18th, he spoke with a neighbor at this apartment complex in Las Vegas who said Michael didn't live there and that she didn't even know him at all, which is interesting because we do know that he was arrested in Illinois, not in Nevada. But at that point, the court granted an order allowing Michael to be served by newspaper publication, which is a step typically taken only when a defendant cannot be located through reasonable means. Court records further state that as of January 5th, 2026, it was still unknown who, if anyone, would represent Michael McKee in the malpractice case. And despite all of this, the lawsuit itself continues to move forward. The court docket shows a status hearing for trial readiness. It's scheduled for April 28th, 2027. And now we have the actual malpractice lawsuit itself, the claims, the allegations, and the timeline. And this is what we are going to go through next because it raises, again, some very interesting questions about what was happening behind the scenes with Michael. And at its core, the lawsuit was filed by a man incarcerated in the Nevada Department of Corrections. And he is the one suing multiple doctors, including Michael McKee, over what he claims was profoundly mishandled medical care while he was in prison. And just a heads up, before we go any further, this lawsuit centers on a very sensitive and very personal medical issue involving a serious injury and its long-term consequences. So yes, it's uncomfortable, mainly in the sense that you're left thinking, how did this go on for so long? The plaintiff, who was incarcerated at the time, says that while working a kitchen job, he was injured while trying to stop a heavy food cart from tipping over as it entered the housing unit. And at that time, he was incarcerated at Lovelock Correctional Center, which is about 7 hours north of Las Vegas in Nevada. In other words, a routine workday in the correctional center for this man quickly turned into a life-altering medical situation. So almost immediately, he began experiencing pain and swelling in his left testicle. He was eventually examined by prison medical staff and diagnosed with a hydrocele, which is a buildup of fluid around the testicle. It is painful, disruptive, but usually also it is very treatable when handled correctly. Correctly being the key word here. Medical decisions for inmates at the facility were made by the medical review panel. This wasn't just one doctor making a snap call. It was a group decision. The panel included, of course, Dr. Michael McKee. It also included Dr. Martin Naughton, Dr. Michael Minev, Dr. Kim Adamson, Dr. Carol Alley, and Dr. Henry Landsman, and Dr. Roel Penna. These doctors were responsible for approving surgeries, referrals, and treatment plans, even when the care itself was being provided by outside specialists. So this was an entire committee, plenty of eyes and opportunities to step in. The panel approved a hydrocelectomy and referred the plaintiff to an outside surgeon, Dr. Paul Gowland, who treated inmates at Humboldt General Hospital in Winnemucca, Nevada, which is about an hour away from the prison. So according to the lawsuit, the panel knew or should have known that Dr. Gowland had little to no experience performing this specific procedure, which is not ideal when the procedure involves a part of the body most people would prefer not to be used for on-the-job training, right? So what happened next seems like the doctor's actions possibly became less like problem solving and more like repeated guesswork, or just trying to band-aid a situation that shouldn't have just had a band-aid put on it. So over the course of more than a year, the plaintiff was sent back to the same surgeon, again and again. Each visit followed a familiar pattern. Fluid was drained, the underlying problem wasn't corrected, and the hydrocele came back again and again and again. This happened 4 separate times, 4 times, each one accompanied by serious pain and swelling. And despite these repeated failures, the medical review panel continued approving the same treatment with the same surgeon. Eventually, the plaintiff was evaluated by a different specialist. This was Dr. Roland Chen, a licensed urologist. And Dr. Chen, he looked at what had been done and determined that the condition had not been properly treated from the start, from the very beginning. And he immediately requested approval to perform the corrective surgery that should have happened much earlier. So basically, despite knowing the plaintiff was in ongoing pain, despite 4 unsuccessful procedures, and despite a specialist clearly stating the problem was unresolved, the medical review panel waited almost 5 months to approve the surgery. And by the time Dr. Chen was finally allowed to operate, he found extensive inflammation and a large mass of necrotic tissue in the left testicle. And at that point, there was no saving it. The left testicle of the patient had to be permanently removed. That's really what this lawsuit boils down to. And from there, it truly became about accountability. The plaintiff alleges deliberate indifference to serious medical needs, which in prison cases means officials knew They knew that there was a substantial risk of harm and failed to act within a reasonable time. He also alleges negligence, arguing that the doctors failed to meet basic medical standards by repeatedly approving ineffective care. And finally, he alleges negligent infliction of emotional distress, pointing to the anxiety, humiliation, and the lasting impact of an injury that he claims was preventable, which seems like it may truly have been preventable if he had been sent to a different doctor ahead of time rather than the same doctor for the same Band-Aid treatment over and over again. The lawsuit seeks damages, attorney fees, and a jury trial. It also notes that the plaintiff followed every required grievance procedure before filing, which is the legal equivalent of saying, I did everything that I was supposed to do, and this still happened. So when you strip away all the formal language in filings like this, the argument is essentially this. The TLDR is this. An inmate suffered a treatable injury. A panel of doctors, including Michael McKee, kept approving the same failed approach. A specialist warned them, months passed, and by the time action was taken, the damage was permanent. So I did some research, and in a case like this, the consequences for the medical review panel could be pretty serious. First, there's civil liability. If a judge or jury decides the panel members were negligent or deliberately indifferent, they could be on the hook personally for damages, including pain and suffering, permanent injury, emotional distress, and legal fees. And because the doctors are named in both their individual and official capacities, that liability could potentially affect them personally, though sometimes the state steps in to cover them. On top of that, a lot of people are pointing out that Michael had let his medical malpractice insurance lapse, which is a big deal in situations like this. Without insurance, no medical insurance, any judgment could come directly out of his own pocket instead of being covered, making any financial liability far more serious for Dr. McKee. And although given that he's now an inmate himself, charged with murdering two people, and I would say more than likely to be convicted of murder, I'll say that, I'm just not sure how much he'd be able to pay out. And beyond the money, there's the Section 1983 angle, which basically says that doctors may have violated the inmate's constitutional rights. So if the court finds that they were deliberately indifferent under the Eighth Amendment, it's not just bad medicine anymore. This becomes a civil rights violation, and qualified immunity might not protect them. And then there's professional fallout, right? State medical boards and licensing authorities could review their actions, potentially leading to anything from a formal reprimand or probation to mandatory retraining, or in the worst case scenario, suspension or even losing a medical license. Even if nothing formal happens, cases like this tend to trigger audits, policy reviews, and a lot more scrutiny on a doctor's professional record. And all of this shows the kind of pressure Michael was under in the months leading up to the murders of Monique and Spencer. This doesn't have anything to do with Monique, but if Michael McKee felt like his life and career were falling apart, right? Lawsuits, repeated failures personally and professionally, I could imagine that kind of stress could have possibly fed into the jealousy and resentment he could have already had toward Monique and the life that she'd built without him. It could explain the mindset he was in at the time, even though none of it anywhere near justifies anything that he did. But it's something I'm certainly thinking about. A new year often makes people think about their mental health, wanting to feel better, lighter, more supported. But for a lot of people, starting therapy feels overwhelming, especially when it's hard to find someone who actually takes your insurance. And that's where Rula comes in. Rula is a healthcare provider group that makes in-network mental health care easier to access and easier to stick with. They partner with more than 100 insurance plans, which brings the average cost to about $15 per session. And depending on your benefits, it could even be $0. That makes therapy feel realistic, not just a short-term resolution. Rula helps match you with licensed therapists and psychiatrists, based on your goals and preferences, often with no wait lists and appointments available as soon as tomorrow. And they support you throughout your care, so therapy becomes a part of your life, not something you try once and then abandon. This year, make one change you can actually stick with. Visit Rula.com/hidden to get started. That's Rula, RULA.com/hidden. Mental health care that's actually built to last. And one of the biggest topics that people keep circling back to in this case is the odd reopening of Monique and Michael's divorce, right? Even though it had ended almost a decade ago, at first glance, it looked like something from the past suddenly resurfaced in June of 2025. A new hearing appeared on the docket with a trial date set for September. But court officials later confirmed it was just a clerical error, and the September date was canceled. Still, I mean, that small mistake has sparked a lot of speculation. Some people wonder if it might have reignited anger toward Monique, right? Imagine being confused about something like that. Michael may have tried to contact her, couldn't get answers, and started digging into her life. Some reports suggest he may have even watched her wedding video again and again, obsessing over every detail, while already under the stress of this looming malpractice lawsuit. Others are debating whether the parties were notified at all, though. We don't know. Some sources say they weren't notified, while others say notifications would have gone out. Even if nothing came in the mail, the court website has the subscription system for updates. If Michael had subscribed years ago, let's say, is it possible he got an automated alert that could have set him off? I don't know. The reality is none of us necessarily know right now for sure how he reacted or if the clerical error played any role at all, but it still is one of the bigger conversations happening online around this case. But now, really quickly, but we've talked a lot about Michael McKee. So I do want to learn a little bit more about who Monique and Spencer Tepe were, as people have started talking more since they were killed. And I want to start with an interview from one of Monique's closest friends. Because when asked what Monique was like, her friend described Monique as so wonderful. She said there aren't enough words in the world to describe how beautiful and kind Monique was. She recalled seeing Monique not long before her death and how thoughtful and loving she was toward everyone around her. Monique asked the friend to hang out, have a drink, and just talk and be together. And she said that Monique was just so sweet, and she was like that to everybody. The friend also shared how Monique and Spencer were together. She never saw them fight or argue, and Spencer would do anything for her. If Monique didn't feel good, he would take care of it. If Monique wanted to leave, he would go. They were just this phenomenal couple. Watching their wedding video, she said that you can definitely see the love that they shared. Monique's friend also spoke about her past marriage to Michael McKee. And she said that while Monique hated what had happened in that relationship, and while it never left her mind, she doesn't think anyone truly thought that this was ever going to happen. Even years later, there were only rumors of Michael's actions. The friend said she was not aware of Michael contacting Monique in Columbus, but she did say, quote, "He's just that sneaky kind of sociopathic smart. I had heard a few rumors, but nothing definite," end quote.
So I think a big question that a lot of people have is they divorced in 2017. It's been a long time. Had he been contacting her or following her in Columbus since then that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, and not that most people that I've talked to are aware of. But he was that he's just that sneaky kind of sociopathic smart that I had heard a few rumors. I'm not sure I should say exactly what, but things that he had said to people surrounding her. But I hadn't heard any definite things of, he was actually anything definite, I should say. Yes.
Do you have any idea why now, after all of these years, that he's accused of doing this heinous act?
Sorry. I think it's just because everything you see the wedding video, everything that people see is who they really were. And they were so perfect and they were so wonderful. And I think he couldn't live with it. I think he could not fathom her happiness. And she was so happy. Her kids were just playing with my kids and everything was perfect and wonderful. And you don't like to say perfect because nobody's perfect, but like to the naked eye, they were.
That's fascinating to me. Sociopathic smart, she said. The friend described hearing of Spencer and Monique's deaths as an absolute shock. She said, quote, "My brother called my mom screaming, and then my mom called me, also screaming that Spencer and Monique were dead. I said, no, they're not dead. We saw them 4 days ago. How could they be dead?" End quote. Yet even in her grief, she remembered Spencer as a class clown and Monique as clever and funny in her own way and always thinking about everyone else. She said, quote, "She was always asking about your life, about how you were doing. She could make eye contact and make you feel like you were her close friend no matter who you were," end quote. It is clear from this interview that Monique and Spencer left a lasting impact on everyone who knew them.
So I will follow along as best I can. I don't really want to know. I don't want to know the bad details. I don't want to know. Because I don't want to remember how they went. I want to remember who they are now, or who they were to me, and who they were to all of us. Not how they left us. So but I will say I do hope this person, I don't even like to say his name, I hope he doesn't see the light of day again.
Next, I want to share some clips from a video Spencer did with the Boys and Girls Club. Hearing him speak, the way his voice carries, and seeing how dedicated he was, I think it helps us understand even just a little bit why his family and friends loved him so much and just how profound a loss this truly is.
Sometimes people have siblings and family at home that support them, but sometimes they need someone else, someone experienced, and they're there for you when you need them.
I thought it was the perfect opportunity to have a role model, male, an adult outside the house that he can share stuff if he needed to. Because a lot of times I feel that kids are not comfortable about talking some of the stuff at home.
Hans has been the easiest match I could have possibly imagined. Since day one, I've known him as a diligent student. He's been focused. He's always been really respectful, kind.
He's a really nice guy. He has a really laid back and lighthearted attitude, but when I need advice, he's always there for me.
He's been the perfect model for Hans. He is being that person that if I doubt on something, I will call him.
I've just tried to remain a role model as best as I can and demonstrate the importance of an education and just really kind of encourage him to pursue more and to do more.
When Hans was recommended for skipping 7th grade, first thing I did was call Spencer. Spencer, what do you think? He's like, we're not going to keep him bored. He's going up. You know him. He can do it. He's mature. I'm like, okay. So I called the next day the teacher and I said, okay, he can go. So up to that point is how much I trust Spencer.
I went to be an industrial engineer when I grew up. I like math and I like using logic to figure out problems. When I was doing my college search, I wasn't sure what school I wanted to go to. Did I want to go to in-state, out of state, big school, small school? So he helped guide me.
My favorite thing about being a big has been how I've become part of his family and he's become part of mine. And it's gotten to a point now where his extended family comes into town from from North Carolina or from California, and we all assemble, get together, and break bread together, and it's the most fun thing in the world.
Spencer's always been there, like, to push him a little bit more than what he wants to do, like he feels that he can do.
He's been really supportive. Like, I have a supportive family, but he's always been there as well. And
Almost anyone can be a good big brother, big sister. You just have to remain committed, just be willing to show up and be available and be willing to listen. He's really almost been a role model for me in return. So it's been a really, really nice experience.
when you're going through like hard times or when you're struggling with something, they're also there. So they can be a friend and supporter and a mentor all at the same time.
Even though Hans has siblings, real siblings, I think Spencer is the one that knows him the best.
I'm just going to continue to remain as supportive as I can and encouraging as I can. I'm really proud of him, and I'm excited to see what his future holds for him.
As more information comes out about Spencer and Monique, it becomes even more clear just how loved they were, how missed they will be, and how important getting justice is, not only for them, but for all of their loved ones, especially the two little children they leave behind. They've been thrust into the unimaginable at such a young age, and while it's clear they have a village behind them, it is also obvious that there will be lasting trauma from their parents being taken away from them so suddenly and at this age. This week, Michael McKee has a hearing on the 23rd, and hopefully shortly after that, will be transferred back to Ohio, where the real legal process will begin. And as we all await justice, Hidden True Crime will be here to update you along the way.